Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. We are joined by one of our many amazing leaders out there, and he's helping other leaders like you lead and do so much. And he's here bringing freedom to potential, coaching for relevance. Randy is a man who wears many hats, and I know if you haven't heard of him yet, well, just a quick overview because there's a lot. He's got to say it. I'm not a good host.
You're a wonderful host, but I'll
No.
be glad to I'll be glad to say it. So
Go, ready? There's like about 30 things that he is. Okay. Go
okay,
ahead.
okay. Well, I'll tell you what, just to introduce for people that
Yes.
maybe have not seen the show before, but my background history has been in aviation and military related aviation, and I'm actually retired military and have been training jet pilots for a number of years. But in addition to that, over about the last 15 to 20 years, I'm also now a certified Marshall Goldsmith executive coach. And so
Mm-hmm.
I understand coaching perspectives, but also just over the last 13 years, I've been very connected with a couple of colleagues over in Germany that are focused on neuroscience with the Institute for Organizational Neuroscience and also the NPN Hub, and very good friends with them and very partnered as colleagues for a lot of things. And so I bring a lot of coaching and a lot of neuroscience aspects to aspects where you're trying to, develop leaders and really make them and their teams successful and not just go with rote academic things all the time. Because guess what? One of the things that I have, and I think you know this, Jill, but one of the things that I have is a concept that is trademarked for me out of Washington that's called organizational maneuverability. And as most people realize, guess what? A lot of things in society, but also a lot of things in business are not just rote academic all the time anymore. So it's some aspects that are very interesting in today's future. And so it's some things people kind of get to thinking about. But that's all um, a lot of the stuff that's sort of aligned with kind of what I bring and what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what I care about and just making others. It's not, for me, it's not about calling attention to myself at all. No.
Never, never.
What?
Although I would love to bring up his book, his movie, all that as
Thank you.
well. So
And,
modest, but just give us an
and
update on that too, because I brought it
okay,
up, not you.
thank you, and I appreciate you doing that. My pleasure there. It's I do have my autobiography that is currently published on Amazon. The title of it is Bringing Freedom to Potential, and it's an aspect of overcoming the things that are trying to hold you back, and you and your team or your family or whatever kind of thing. And it's like I say, it's published on Amazon, but also what I sort of was blown away in a positive way by how PBNN kind of, got this thought going. But Hollywood actually created a movie documentary of my life and journey, and it is published. We signed a contract several weeks ago, and I know AEMG is out, marketing it now and starting that whole marketing process and everything. And so it's just, and for me, the whole story of that is not calling attention to myself. And you've heard me say this before, Jill, but I don't, uh, after I take my last breath, I don't mind if 20 years after that, somebody doesn't remember my name. But what I do hope is that they gained one or two insights from my story or from something, maybe from the book, maybe from the movie, maybe from something that they hear here,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing, um, that they apply to their life and they are blown away by the positive results. And so that's, my whole thing is not about myself. It's about, making a difference in other people and helping them really get some of those insights that can make them go to radical results that just
Yep.
blow them and their family away.
And
And so,
leading leaders is what you do best.
yep. And because guess what? Leaders is critical for that because you know
Mm-hmm.
why? they need to be able to do that with their people and their
Yeah.
teams. And the organizations don't reach those radical results
Mm-hmm.
unless the leaders have a degree of doing that. And and it's sort of interesting because the I was the working for a defense a department contractor flying Learjets, acting as the enemy and the bad guys for a lot of our air defense forces. This is 35 years ago or so, but there was apparently the manager of it was getting into some issues apparently with the people, and the head of the whole operational organization called me and had a conversation with me at home. And when he heard about my thoughts on it, he said, "So Randy, you want to replace him?" I went, "What?"
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Seriously?" I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, have you had any other conversations?" He said, "No, not yet." And I said, "I'll tell you what, you go have whatever conversations you need to have with whoever. But then if you want me to, you can then call me back." And they did. And I actually became the site manager of that site for it. And because those insights are critical when you're talking about true success and really building your success in your team and everything. And so that's what I bring. That's what I'm all about.
Beautiful. Thank you. And what did you have in mind for us today in regards to leadership? Where are we starting off?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll share with you very quickly that remember last week, and for those that perhaps listened last week, you remember that I was talking about neuroscience, an aspect of it, and talking about the chemicals that your brain releases. And you remember some of those were
Mm-hmm.
norepinephrine, which is a chemical that makes you want to fire up and fight something. Uh, you got dopamine, which is the chemical that makes you feel patted on the back for something. Oxytocin, which helps you feel very oneness and kind of connected with people and things like that. So we went over some of those last week. But
Mm-hmm.
what I'm going to plan to do this week is when you're talking about leading, and particularly in challenging situations and all that, uh, I'll bring out basically one point and I'll expand on it a little bit. And as I mentioned to you, Jill, before we started this, I'll probably bring out one little um, aviation example of it, which might give a little bit of an example of that, but then tailor it back to, how what leaders need to think differently about when you're connecting with your team. Because so often today, and probably anybody that's listening
Mm-hmm.
probably has seen this before, but so often today, leaders think it's just my job to tell you what to do and you go do it, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah,
And
no.
but you know what? That is not leadership, and that is
Mm-mm.
not preparing for radical success going forward. And so I'll bring a couple of insights in that sometimes people can think about. And you remember last week what I talked about was the different people that you have on your team. Guess what? Those chemicals that their brain is releasing
Mm-hmm.
may be different on different people. If you're reacting to everybody on your team exactly the same way,
Oh,
you may be missing the boat. You
yep.
have to understand what it is that's really driving them, what it is, and how you really get them moving forward in a positive way. Not just telling them what to do, but them creating it and everything. And so, what I'll do is I'll step forward a little bit today and bring a little bit of an insight on that and a couple of aspects about it in a workplace, with also a hint of where a lot of businesses are going today, and some things to sort of think about it. And what I'm going to focus on today is not just the chemicals, but in neuroscience, what I'm going to focus on today is the aspect of true mental processing, that happens in your brain. And do your people do that well? And how do you know? And so it'll have that kind of an insight in it in terms of leading teams and working together with true synergy and reaching radical success.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Cool, cool. Well, that's what I'll sort of focus on.
Well, let's get started.
Okay.
Uh, and then I know we have some aviation aspect perspective at the end too, as always.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll leave just a few minutes at the end to do that. So, but I will say this just very quickly that, when you're talking about this aspect of processing, your brain has to process factors a lot of times that are rising in a given situation. And one of
Okay.
the things that happens so often in today's world, and what you probably heard me say this before, but in the chemicals that the brain releases, what I refer to is this as a dopamine fix. In other words, is something that we were fixed on because we just want to call attention to ourselves. Well, guess what? When factors are coming on scene,
Yeah.
guess what? You have to be aware and aware of processing it well. When guess what? The solution to get to the radical result may not be exactly just that. And do you have some clarity on it? Are you building your team where they have some clarity on it? And one of the things that I'll just give an aviation kind of picture here that's kind of an analogy of it. But one of the things when you're talking about um, flight crews today and everything. Guess what? You have a lot of automation in the airplanes for the most part. You have a lot of FMSs, which is flight management systems, which are computers that are all based off of the internet stuff and all this kind of stuff and make it all work for you. Well, guess what? One of the things that you have to be aware of, very much aware of, is at what point are you simply depending on that? And the reason that I say this is somebody might be blown away by the number of times I have heard a pilot or somebody else say, well, gee, that should have done this. Well, you know what? It didn't. And are you aware of it? Are you aware of how you're going to know when that's not working correctly and what you need to do about it to be able to do it? There's times where guess what? You may have to turn off the automation and just fly the airplane to get to a certain point or something like that. There can be times where that is necessary, and can your flight crew really do that? And and so I throw it out there just as a golly gee whiz. And the thing that I'll kind of expand on just a touch here is that, as you know,
Mm-hmm.
AI is coming into a lot of organizations going forward in the future. Is something that is really coming on scene. And you got to be aware of how this dopamine fix kicks
Mm-hmm.
in, because what a lot of people would have a tendency to do, or at least a temptation to do, is to say, well, they just shut their brain off because this is doing it now. But you know what if it's not doing it right? What if it is missing a key factor? What is
Mm-hmm.
it that's missing a key detail that is critical? Are you aware of that? And is your team aware of how you're going to do it differently and better and get to the solution, even if you may have to turn that off
Yeah.
or set it aside somehow, kind of thing. And so when you look at all the automation out there, what a lot of people have a tendency to have been taught in and developed to is to just shut your brain off and go with it. Well, this is doing this. This is, and you know what? It sounds kind of crazy, but in an airplane environment, if it causes you to crash, somebody might say, well, you know what? It should have done this. It should have done that. Why didn't you do something about it?
Yeah.
Why didn't you take it over
Mm-hmm.
or turn it off if necessary?
True.
Why didn't
Yeah.
your team step aside
Yeah.
and know that this is how I get to the radical result that we're looking for? And you know what? If that ain't getting us there, you know what? Am I aware of that? Does my mental processing really bring that to fruition and clarity? And does my mental processing allow for a real solution that will get me there? And these are some aspects that aren't necessarily there every single day, but you know what? They do come up sometimes. And because guess what? Equipment sometimes becomes dysfunctional. It's not working right or whatever. And are you aware of that? And what do you need to do about it? And the other part of this that I'll just say is when you're talking about leading your team in a challenging environment like that,
Yeah.
one of the things that you have to be able to do is ask the right questions so that you and your team become very clear and aware of what kind of factors and things would make me aware that that's
Yeah.
starting to happen. And if that's the case, what am I truly going to do about it? And there's just a lot of aspects like that when you're talking about a challenging situation with a lot of things that are kind of coming on scene today that a lot of people don't realize. It's not just about going with rote academic things that, okay, we put this computer in here, so you know what, it just does that. Just we'll just go get coffee or something like that. You know what? That may be true, but guess what? On the next one, it may not be.
Yeah.
Are
True,
you
right?
aware of it? And how are you really going to be aware of that in your mental processing?
Mm-hmm.
And if all you're doing is thinking in terms of, well, it should have been done like this, that screwed it up. That's not good enough. Because the thing is that's screwed it up, but you didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't take you there because the automation is not the leader. You are, and have some awareness of that when you're talking about these critical organizational maneuverability sort of concepts. Because you know what? Automation is not always perfect. There are times when it's kind of cool, but you know what? There's also some times where it can fall apart for whatever
Yeah.
reason. And the bottom line is if all you and your team are doing is shutting your processing down to come up with rote academic answers, well, that should just do that. That just should do that. You know
Mm-hmm.
what? If that's all you're doing, you are missing the boat. You're not a leader anymore because leaders are aware of when certain challenges come on scene and have clarity on it and realize what they need to do. And also what you need to develop in your team so that they can also do that. And so that's just some aspects that I thought I would bring today. And it like I say, it sort of has that aviation little analogy to it kind of
There,
thing.
yeah, it's always a little aviation
Yeah,
analogy.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I was going for. Well, always
But
because
I, but I,
that's
but I will tell you, just like I said, you would be surprised at how many times I have heard a pilot in my career say, "Well, this should have been like that." If you hear somebody doing that, they are shutting off their mental processing because you know what? They're just playing blame games and putting it in a situation where they don't have to think. Guess what? You know what? They're missing the boat. They're not being a leader when they do that. And because you got to be aware of when something is not exactly right, when it's not working just perfectly, and what do you need to do about it when that occurs, and how do you need to do that. And the bottom line is, like I said, if you're just sitting there because you're wanting a pat on the back because you know it was supposed to be like this kind of thing, that's probably that dopamine fix. You're looking for a pat on
totally
the
right.
back for some real little thing. There are times when you got to throw that dopamine fix away and truly use your mental processing to ascertain the factor, the situational awareness, which is a key part of what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
True situational awareness to really develop that in such a way that there is clarity
Yeah.
on what we need to do a little bit differently on this. And so when you're talking to your team, like I say, not only is it just having that understanding and clarity, but it's also this aspect of being able to truly develop the people in your team so that they can have clarity on that and their mental processing is going in such a way that they can achieve, even if you're not there. If they see it and you're not there because of
Mm-hmm.
whatever, whatever situation or whatever, um, can they do it? Have you developed your team to be able to do that? And have you developed your team to be able to interact synergistically in such a way? Because as I mentioned in our last show, each person on the team's a little different. Do they understand what each of them are seeing and being aware of? And do you bring it together in a synergistic thing? Not just telling people to shut their brains off and just go do this, but really getting a sense of that, success to happen and everything, and how all that is happening. So it's just kind of a one step ahead a little bit of kind of some of the neuroscience stuff we were talking about last week. But uh, this mental processing is more than just coming up with rote stuff. And you know what? So many people today, they just want it's a dopamine fix, but so many people in the world today just want a pat on the back. They just want to give you their answer and make you just capitulate to their answer so that they can feel like a dopamine and get a pat on the back and everything. That's not true leadership. True leadership is where you're really getting the processing going in your people. And they are not only seeing that this is possibly one aspect of how we get there, but you know what? Here's some of the factors that might come on scene with that. And what are we going to do about it? How are we going to adapt, tweak as we need to, and everything? And so when you talk about doing it in a changing environment and all that kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
those are just some things from that neuroscience, sort of central theme, if you will, that people have to do it. And what I wanted to just focus on today is this whole aspect of true mental processing. It's not just going with a rote, superficial academic answer and making everybody just capitulate to that. If that's what you're doing, you're not being a leader and you're not being truthful, truly. It doesn't mean that the answer is totally wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but you're not really getting everything to radical success. And so it's just one aspect. I thought I'd take this one step further, bringing a little bit of the neuroscience awareness to it, but also realizing what people need to be thinking about.
Beautiful. And by the way, what again, I can't even pronounce it. You are also being trained in, you have your degree, neurolinguistics. What is it?
Well, what I'm doing is it's been on hold a little bit. I've been working on a PhD that is going to be focusing more on neuroscience and leadership and things of that nature.
Yes.
But it's all on hold just a little bit, just because of the way the schedules have gone and everything.
Okay.
And so I haven't totally given up on it, but I got to go. I'm looking at kind of where I'm going to connect with back and get it going again and stuff. So it's but again, I am very very aligned with the Institute for Organizational Neuroscience and the NPN Hub over in Germany, and very good colleagues with Dr. Kennedy over there and his wife Jordana Kennedy, who's kind of the lady that does a lot of my website stuff, and she does some of the marketing stuff and all that kind of stuff. So it's but yeah, I'm working on that. It's kind of on hold right now just because of the way some schedules went with the movie coming out and all of that sort of stuff and everything. I just didn't have time to keep going on it, but looking at probably bringing it back to complete it.
Oh my goodness. And when, and where can we see the movie? I'm excited. Soon.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's out there, and AEMG is marketing it. And one of the things that I'm going to be doing probably within the next week is getting Jordana and and Todd, the AEMG marketing guy that's doing it, together on a Zoom call and everything, and we're going to kind of talk about it and kind of see where it is and get some information where it is, because the ION people over in Germany are very interested in finding out where it is so they can go get it and pass information about it and things of that nature. So as soon as we get some of that information, I'll definitely let you know. And and all that. But yeah, they're out. It's out there. I know that there was going to be several platforms that they were looking to put it on. I don't know if it's actually on them quite yet because I know they got to come up with the contracts and all that sort of stuff. But I think my understanding is they're going to try to put it on HBO and Netflix and things like that, and some others. But don't know that it's out there yet, but it's getting very close. And I know AEMG is working on getting it out there, so it'll be out there. I will say this: the people that have seen my story and made the comments about what they saw in the movie and everything
Yeah.
have been amazed, and I'm humbled by that. So I'm very honored and humbled by it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
But as soon as I get a confirmation of kind of where it is right now, I'll definitely let you know because I'll be making
We'll
sure
be
that
talking about it. We're going to show some of it here on the show, I hope.
yeah, we do. Yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
We'd love to. So yeah, we'd be glad to talk a little bit about it maybe next week or something or on that. So that would be good.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure having you here, Randy. And how are we going to end it off for today?
Well, just I know you like to end it out with just the contact information. What I tell people is, and by the way, I'll just let you know it's always a pleasure being on with you too. I totally respect you and appreciate who you are and all that and everything.
Ditto, ditto, ditto.
But if you go to my website of Coaching for Relevance, at the very bottom of the homepage, you'll
Yeah.
see my cell phone and my email. And if somebody wants to reach out and contact me, I don't do sales calls. If
Yep.
somebody calls me and they have a real need of something, yeah, we'll come up with something. Uh, but if they just want to have a conversation, we can do that. And
You're the man.
so
You're
yeah,
there.
that's it.
Thank you
Well, I'll tell
so
you what,
much,
Jill,
Randy.
it's always a pleasure. I'm always honored just being on here with you, and I hope you have a
Ditto.
wonderful
Pleasure's all
rest of the
mine. I
week.
can't wait to meet you one of these days. It's going to be so awesome. We're both going to be like, what? Like, because we know each other so well. But then when you meet someone in person, it's like a little different, but not, but like it is. So it'll happen one day.
Yeah,
It's on my bucket
and
list.
and you know what? Both of us will sit there and go, well, I don't want to leave too quick. So
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you, Randy. Enjoy the rest of your day, sweetheart. Stay good. Bye.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.